This is deck 1. I have the Four of Pentacles, the Two of Pentacles, and the Knight of Swords. What this shows me is that you are very independent at the moment. However, it appears in these cards that you have just recently met someone. He or she appears to be quite well suited to you because you have a similar perspective. You are very similar in your outlook and your approach to life. I can see you are bound together in some way, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is a soulmate of yours. It doesn't show a karmic person, it shows a soulmate, because I feel from these cards that you are intertwined on a spiritual plane. Because it also shows somebody you've been with over lifetimes, somebody you have some kind of obligation to in a higher realm. So it is destined. I can see the lady in this situation is holding on to him. So it's like he's very intellectual, he's very smart. That's one aspect of him. But you've brought him back down to earth because he can go off with the fairies very easily. He's a very passionate person. He's very strong in the mind, very strong-willed, because he's extremely intelligent. And he's looking right at you. He must have had his head in the clouds before he met you. But you've kept him steady, you've stabilized him and his emotions, because this is a guy that's trying to find balance in his life. You know, he's juggling a lot of things, and the challenge is that he overthinks things. And I think you're standing between him taking his habit of striking down relationships and love. You're standing between that idea he gets in his head, that thought, and you're protecting him and his passions from that strike. So it's really just showing me here that he's very devoted to you. But I can see here that you have a focus on yourself and that he's just showing up and you're like, oh, you know, I was so focused on this other aspect of my life. So now you're of two minds. It's like you can't focus on two things at once, but he's come along now, so you've got to hold on to him. That's what it shows me. So it just shows me that this association will bring a lot of growth and harmony into your life. And it's kind of a renewal for you. So you must have gone through a stage where you didn't have anybody, because it shows that your focus is on yourself and your stability, and it's not on having a partner. But he's swung in, so you have to consider him now. So you really are of two minds. You're trying to consider this person, stop him from floating away again, and you're also very focused on yourself and your monetary situation and your stability. There's a lot of harmony between you. There's a whole renewal process, a love renewal, a lot of energy. But also it shows on his side that he has ambition. You know, he has a lot of ambition. He can be greedy. He has a focus on his finances, and he's also very intelligent. That's what it shows. But also it shows that he's going through some trials at the moment. And by the looks of things, it is destined. It kind of shows here, quote unquote, the word of God. So it means that he's going through some trials that he has to go through to grow in spirit, because with this indication here that he's been quite ambitious and greedy, something must have happened, because it shows he's now going through trials, and the trials are because he has to grow spiritually. You know, so I wouldn't be surprised if he has a royal bloodline or something. It seems to me that maybe his ancestors were royalty or something like that. I don't know. Maybe you're his princess on a soul plane. And he has to go through these trials because he has to grow as a person. And it shows here your challenge in this relationship is the Knight of Swords. That's his intellectual side, that's his cold side. So you are holding on to him tightly. You are really trying to stop him from floating back into the clouds. I can see that. But what it shows is that there's a unity here. There's an intertwining on a spiritual level, and it's his central focus as well. He is very passionate towards you, but he can be jealous as well. So you're of two minds at the moment, but there is a unity here. So in terms of how he feels about you, well, it shows that on the male side, he's had his head in the clouds. He's a very smart guy, but he's going through some trials at the moment because the karmic cycle is turning. It shows that he was not a very nice guy in the past. It shows that he was too greedy, too ambitious, and far too focused on the cold aspects of life. And that table has turned, and he's had to go through these trials. And his feelings towards you are that you are the grounding influence in his life, and he wants to have unity with you and balance. And I think he only could come to this resolution because you showed up. You know, he was going through these trials and feeling quite alone in them. And then when you showed up, he has gained some wisdom. And so I think he's decided that you are his emotional happiness, and he'd like to buy you some roses or something like that. So he has romantic feelings towards you. But because he has this intellectual and cold side, it's hard for him to express himself. And that will be the challenge in this relationship. Shows here also with deck 1 that I think we were talking about how he was a greedy guy, quite ambitious, and he had women to match that lifestyle. But his focus really was his money. It wasn't the women. You can see that there were some very sexy women that hung off his arm, but it wasn't his focus. It almost was a part of the lifestyle, but it wasn't something he was after. These women weren't people he was after or took any interest in. They were just there as accessories. So he did have some very sexy women there. I can see that he might have been into, like strip clubs, that type of thing. But he's really going to just, and it led him into some wayward behaviour by the looks of things. So I think that was part and parcel of the environment he was in, or because it looks to be a very materialistic environment, and he had accessories. So he had the lady, he had the devilish dancer, that sort of thing. But she was obviously after his pentacles, but she wasn't looking at him in any romantic aspect. So that kind of tells me that the women that he's had have been money women. They haven't been genuine relationships, and that's going to be a challenge for you also, because his intellectual side is cutting down all that. He's cutting it out of his life, particularly the strippers and that sort of thing, and the money women. He's getting rid of that out of his life, because I think he can see that it didn't benefit him, and his life now is so much different. Like, he's having this spiritual awakening, so he can't have those women in his life. If he sits there now and he has people out of his pockets when he's only got the 2 pentacles, because it shows me he's really trying to hold on to his money. So he's gone from a privileged position into a more simple type arrangement, and that didn't fit. That doesn't fit well with the women he had before. So he's cut all that out of his life because he just can't afford to live that life anymore. He can't afford to have the money women. He can't afford to have an accessory lady, um, because something's changed drastically. That's what it shows. But he's still got his faculty about him, his mental faculty. And his mental faculty is telling him that he needs to get rid of those women in his life. And he needs to focus on a person like yourself that wants to give him genuine love, that wants to keep him grounded, that wants to grow something um, safe with him, that wants to he kind of is very practical about your relationship, because he says to himself, well, I don't have much and she doesn't have much, but we can grow together. We can love one another and we can grow together, and we can grow our pennies together, and we can grow our love together, and we can see what happens. So he's in a much healthier state of mind. I mean, he may not have the fortune anymore, but he has the healthy and realistic and stable outlook. He's still got his side, which is very airy fairy, obviously, because that's the challenge. So you will have to keep holding him down so he doesn't float. As I said before, because it's just his mental faculties are just always working, in every type of area. And I think the environment he was in, he was indoctrinated into it. So he would have had the peer that wasn't so, that would have peers that would have been assholes. He would have had the women that would have been superficial. He would have had the money, ambition that didn't serve him well, but he saw it as a way of keeping in with his peers. So he's still got that faculty in him, because he obviously went through a whole cycle of this behavior. That's what it shows. He's gone through a life cycle of this behavior, and he's just moving out of that. So you've really got to consider that you have somebody in the best possible way, in the best possible terms, who is challenged. But what it's saying is that challenge is going to be easy if you take the right approach. If you understand that he has these follies, if you understand this person and you're willing to hold on to him, keep things steady for him, keep things grounded, keep things stable, then you will have success with him. And you will be able to build something from scratch, basically, which is both loving and nurturing, which is fertile, and which can grow into the future. But I think, with this Knight of Swords here as a challenge, there's a side to him you will never be able to control, ever. And there's a coldness to him, because he's had this indoctrination. So you've really got to look at this fella quite frankly. But there is love there. It's like your love was his savior. It's and it's a beautiful love. It's like a fresh love. It's really quite almost innocent as well. It's something he doesn't understand. You've got to understand that he has to tap into his boyish self almost to understand what he's feeling. Those feelings he hasn't felt for quite a while. So you have to be patient, and you have to be forgiving, and you have to be a stabilizing influence, because I think that Knight of Swords can react quite strongly. He can go off in a whim quite easily, and so you've got to take a calm approach. That's what it's saying. you've got to be willing to persevere. I don't think the love is going to be hard. The love is going to be easy. It's his personality that's hard, because there's something in him which taps out now and again, and you're like, oh gosh, like we've just had this really positive exchange, or I've been able to get him to do so much, which is or I've been able to evolve this relationship, so well in the past week. Why is he tapping out? Why is where is he? Where is his mind? Why has he gone out with his friends? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? You'll have those types of problems, because it's only because he's been through a cycle of indoctrination, and he may not ever be able to break that cycle, but you have such a strong influence over him that you can pull him out of the thorns. The love that you show him is equal. It's like you're two different people. He's red, you're white. He's a red rose, you're the white rose. But you're still both the same flower. So you both still love one another the same. You still have the most beautiful feeling for one another. It's just that his personality side is a bit askew because he's gone through all these issues. I mean, can you imagine somebody that has all these beautiful love feelings that have just been trampled on for years and years and years? That is a beautiful soul, but was in like a cold environment. Like, can you imagine putting a rose in the frostbite? That's what's happened to him. And not only have you thawed him out, and not only has he established his foliage again, but he's understanding what it's about. But that it's like that the Night King, of Game of Thrones, like he's a very cold person, like he's the Night King. He's like, what is he, King of the Dead or something? So he's been in the armies of the dead for years and years and years, and you've just brought him to life. So you've got to expect that he's going to have this folly, and he's going to find it difficult sometimes. But that the answer to your question is that he feels love for you, and it's a very beautiful love. Okay, so that was deck 1. This is deck 2. I have the Knight of Swords, the Ace of Coins, and the Emperor. What these cards tell me is that you're in love with an extremely intelligent individual. It shows that he is devoted to you and that he's extremely passionate about you. It also shows that you're the only person in his life. There seems to be 2 other women, but he looks upon them, to use this as an analogy, as ferrets. He doesn't look upon them as his sole love, but you are his everything, and he feels very blessed to have you in his life, and he feels so blessed and so loving and passionate towards you that he's willing to put that sword down. So I see here that there's actually 2 men in your life. The one you're in love with is the more intelligent man. He has a very strong intellect. I'd say he has a university degree, and he'd be in a field where he uses his brain, so that could be anything, but he's got a very sharp mind. However, it just shows at the moment that he's put his sword away, so he's not using that mouth against people generally, especially against you. You've really pacified him, and I think you've pacified him because he knows that you're the one. It's almost as if you are the Holy Grail in terms of love. In terms of love, you're his Holy Grail, and he's found you. and he doesn't need to use that sword for any other purpose anymore. He doesn't need to use it to defend you. He doesn't need to use it to cut down other men to get to you. He doesn't need to use it in life because he's found his peace when he met you, which means that he's willing to be very honourable towards you. He's willing to allay his passions for you. Even though he's slept with many women, he was always used to moving his relationships forward quite quickly. But with you, it's different. With you, he shows you a kind of respect. So if you're in a direct relationship with this man, I wouldn't be surprised if he's taking things slow with you. And if you're not in a direct relationship, he's not thinking about you in any type of crude manner. He's fantasizing about you, but not in an erotic way that is offensive. He's actually very calm about you both, and he's feeling really refreshed about having found you and being able to take a seat now. Before, it was as if he was always standing when he wasn't with you. You know, he was always on guard, and now he's just decided to take a seat because he's found you. And his whole being has calmed. Like, if you knew him to be a different person before, it shows that something about him has changed when he met you, and there's been a significant change in his disposition as well. It's like he's still the man that he was. He's still a bit ferocious intellectually, in that he can still be cut lip and he can still talk quite a bit and go off with the fairies now and again. But what it's saying is that something about you has pulled him heavily down to earth, like to the point where he can take a rest now. And that shows me that his devotion to you wins over everything. Even those two women that hang around him, or those two men, whoever they may be, they don't win over you because you are his biggest prize in life. But also it shows that he's a man that makes money, and he prizes his career and his money highly. He's good at making money too. But it shows, I think I was talking about another man, it shows the challenge is this other man that's coming forward. And it shows him as a future person, so you may or may have not met him, because it shows him in the future. It doesn't show him in the present or the past. But this man is also a very strong man. I mean, he can match. He presides over the King of Swords, basically, and he can match his power and outweigh it. And his feelings towards you, one of happiness. You know, it's like joy and sunshine. You know, he's very enthusiastic about you. He's fascinated about you. You make him feel really happy and determined. You make him feel successful. And you make him feel encouraged. That's what this other man, the feelings this other man displays towards you, whether you met him or you're going to meet him. So I can see he's very flamboyant. He's a very flamboyant individual and very successful. So here you have two extremely strong men after you. Very strong. But he plans, this emperor plans to restore the harmony in your life, that's for sure. That's what it shows clearly. He's very loyal to you as well. But he hangs out with the men. He doesn't have ferrets around him. When I see this King of Swords, I see like ferrets. I think of it like a lower a creature that is lower in the food chain in some respect. In respect that there's always something bigger looking to get after them, but also very clever. Like, I can see a creature that's very clever, very resourceful, but also one who's under threat. Whereas and so that's the type of people your King of Swords attracts to him. And maybe he attracts those people because the King of Swords is willing to protect the animals. Whereas the Emperor is different in this situation. He has men that guard him. You know, he's like a man amongst men. He's the man amongst men. And so he has humans, you know, humans that protect him. Other men protect him. It's like he's in a male society. He's not in a female society. Whereas, and they have to be somehow on his level, but not quite. And that's the impression I get. Like he has very protective men around him. Whereas your king has people that, the types of people he needs to protect, but not necessarily that would protect him. That's what it shows. So we have here, I think, that one of his ferrets, quote unquote, has come across your emperor. So maybe your emperor was feeling particularly protective towards you at some point and had words, or there was a confrontation in some respect, but it doesn't look like it was directly with the swordsman, so with your swordsman. So it shows here that he's watching you, he's observing what you are doing and who you are doing it with, because obviously he has dibs on you. He has some kind of idea about you, which is very strong and unwielding. It's like he really wants you. He's very loyal to that idea. He's very loyal to bringing you into his life, but he is a challenge to the one that you love, to the one that you're asking about. A big challenge. I guess you can look at this on the other side of the coin as well, where you have somebody that's stopping you both from moving on with your life together. But I don't think it's that. I think he has a contender. Your man has a contender. And because to me, if an emperor is a highly emotionally developed individual, he's not petty. So for an emperor to be jealous of your man, or to try and stop a fling, or stop a relationship, or stop something developing on an emotional level, is beneath him. So I think this man has dibs on you. I think he's really has some desire to have you in his life. I don't think he's like a negative person that's interfering in the relationship between you both. I think he's positive in and of himself, but you are the person that he wants, and he takes a strong interest in your affairs and what you do and how you go about things. You can see he's not interfering too much, because he's going around the situation in the respect that he'll go to the ferret first. He doesn't go to your king. He doesn't interfere if there's a relationship with your king. He doesn't want to be jostling around your man. He just wants to find out what's happening. And maybe in some respect he has his own ferret that talks to the, because he's the king of all the animals. So maybe he has a ferret that answers to him. But that's also, you know, like that's just an analogy of how I'm trying to explain what the relationship is between everybody in the situation. So he's definitely got, you know, quite a big house or quite a big property portfolio behind him, and he wants to put you in that castle, the Emperor. So he does have a very strong interest in you. I can see here the one that you're in love with has darker hair, and the one that the Emperor has lighter hair, and that might give you some guidance as well. But of course the King of Swords is like air, so Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. So you have to sort of look at those aspects as well, I guess, and try and determine from that who is going to be your man. You know, I can see they're both very strong monetarily wise. They're both very successful. They both, or at some point, you know, the situation is that they have money. If they don't have stability or success in their careers, they have some kind of, there's something that holds them down, something that they feel they've achieved in life, and that's the core of their being. But I don't know, I mean, it seems to me that you'll have a choice between two men into the near future. Because they're both extremely loyal to you. And you know, this King of Swords, even though he has these strong feelings for you, he's not facing you all the time, and he's can be three different people. And you might have found that, like, when you speak to him, sometimes what he says is contradictory, and you kind of have to think twice sometimes. Like, oh, you know, where's he coming from? Like, he sort of has a strong personality that you like, but there's something about the contradiction that sort of sits on your shoulders. You can't quite place exactly where he's getting at. So it just shows that these three faces he has could disrupt you. But it also shows your love is somebody from your past. So maybe you've since moved on from him. Just recently, it shows. Very recently. So he's looking everywhere else except in your direction. And but I can see here, one's the sensible guy, one's the mischievous guy, and one's the baby. So that might ring a bell for some of you. So his personality is conflict in some way, you know, because he's got quite a strong intellect and he can be quite mouthy. But so sometimes you must be taken aback by him, because he does come across as quite demure, but there are these other sides to him which conflict with his main personality. So sometimes things get confusing, and also I guess with somebody that has different faces, you might come across problems. You know, sometimes people with different faces have a tendency of treating you differently on the side. You know, you might have found that he saw other women without your knowledge, or if he didn't see other women, he liked other women. You might have seen a side to his character which you didn't like very much from time to time, and which conflicted with his main personality, which left you quite stunned. He could also have habits that you know about but confuse you. So he could be a very straight-laced type of guy, but he could also be an addict of some kind. These are the types of things you find in people with different faces. I guess it's just another method of protecting himself. You know, because he's got the sword, and then he's got the faces, other faces of his aspects of his personality, and then you find him, kind of thing. You know, so it's all of those elements are used to protect himself, along with his sword, along with his intellect. So he does that to protect himself, basically. And you'll see a lot of different, you know, those different sides come out from time to time, and then you'll forgive him quite easily. And the reason you forgive him quite easily is because those aspects are very small elements of his personality, but it's like going to be also an annoyance to you. Like, it depends how bad it is as well, I guess. You know, it's like a scale of misbehavior. Like, it can be extremely bad or minor. It shows like it's a minor habit. Like, these other aspects to his personalities are minor habits, but I just feel if those faces of his different aspects of his personality are misguided, then it can turn into something that's quite bad. So that's the impression I get. So it shows here that he's grown some part of his hair long. So could have grown a mustache, could have grown a beard. He could have grown his hair a little longer than short. Anything like that. But usually he's clean-faced. That's what it shows. Especially like, and it also shows that you know, he can be a deceitful guy at times. And I guess maybe his deceit comes out when he's because it shows that his deceit is connected to the other aspects of his personality, or the other faces that he has going. So I guess that has something to do with that. But whereas on the other hand, the Emperor is very loving towards you. Like, he's just full of love towards you, and his level of deceit is very minor. Like, you probably wouldn't ever hear of him lying to you purposely, or telling, you know, fibs to you all the time. Like, I just feel that your king has these habits where he could tell fibs, whereas your emperor doesn't have those habits. Like, he's just full of love. Really? And it just shows that you know, to me, like, in my opinion, everybody tells fibs from time to time, which turn, you know, that seems to be the way. What it's saying is that your Emperor, who you may not have met yet, but who is part of your future, doesn't tell that many fibs. I'd say he's quite honest, you know, because he just has, I guess because he has authority, he probably doesn't need to tell big whoppers or little whoppers to you. He just doesn't, because he's a very dignified individual, you know, commanding individual. It's like he tells white lies. He doesn't tell he tells white lies, that's what I'd say. So it also shows his love for you. Wouldn't be surprised if he likes to dress like you, dress in your colors. That's what it shows. You know, do something to honor you. That's what it shows. He just wants to do something to honor you all the time.